Today, I really wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about more and more over this past week or so, and I think part of this, we've got this new teen class that we're doing here in our studio, and when you're working with kids and you're working with teens, part of what we're trying to do is to make things fun and to get people to really enjoy movement. But it actually just made me go a little deeper in terms of thinking about what we're doing or what we're not doing as we get older that keeps us moving and in the end keeps us playing. When I think about, and when I'm talking play, I'm just talking about doing things we love and really just being in the flow, just doing, just moving and having an activity that you do just for the sake of doing it because you are just having fun, you're laughing, you're with friends, and you're not having to think about every little thing you're doing. And when you think about, small children, where do small children spend most of their time, okay? Whether it's inside or outside, they're on the floor. They're on the floor, they're getting up and down off the floor. Granted, when you're 3 foot tall, it's a lot closer to to get up and down from the floor from there. But when you think about what is it that makes us feel old, it's that, oh gosh, it's so far to get down there, and even getting down to sit into a chair is a little painful. And the reality is that we've gotten deconditioned, okay? We have gotten away from the very practice of doing some really basic things, which is getting up and down off a floor, sitting on a floor, lying down, being on a surface that isn't this cushy little assistive sling for us. And if you want to continue to play, whether you're playing golf, you're playing a sport, you're just going on hikes and just enjoying life, you've got to get back to practicing playing, which in my mind means practicing some basic movements that get you back on the floor. So let's think about actually some of the things that you would need to do to pretty much play anything. If we're thinking play, you've got to be able to squat. So to be able to squat, you've got to have good mobility in your ankles and in your hips. If you're going to do anything where you're throwing, you're reaching, you're going to have good shoulder function, good mobility in the middle spine, and and even jumping. Hey, why not, right? You've got to be able to have good alignment and strengthen your legs. So, and things like running and skipping, skipping, who skips, right? It's really interesting how many adults I have, and I try to get them to skip, and they don't know how to skip anymore. And, skipping is tricky. It's a combination of balance, it's coordination, it's being able to do some quick movement, it's being able to land. So, when you think about, well, what do you need to have these sort of basic movements? And a lot of it, like I said, is starting at, what's going on with regards to hip mobility, to having mobility at the ankles and feet, and just thinking back to if I were a kid, if I were, like a 2-year-old, and I was playing, what would I be doing? I'd be on the floor. I'd probably have my shoes off, okay? So I'd get out of these boxes that really inhibit, your body's ability to sense. When you think about it, there's a osteopath and acupuncturist out of he lives in New Zealand now. I think he's Australian. His name is Philip Beach. If you see any of his stuff, check it out. It's really good. But he's got a theory about, some of his models of movement are really, I really agree with them, and I think there's something to be said about what we're doing when we are, putting shoes on our feet. If you think about where we have most of our sensation and where, what we're programmed to do. I mean, your head is essentially a big old sensory organ, right? You got your eyes, your nose, you smell, you taste, you hear, and everything from that. Your hands are basically what you're going to be using to, grasp whatever you're going to do, grasp your tool, do whatever you're going to, put food in your mouth. Your feet are sensing where you are in space, and, if you have to hurry up and run away from prey, or if you're going to go run and play tag, right? Either way, your feet are doing all this little sensing of what's happening and where your body is shifting. So, let's take the example of, what if we were to take a pair of shoes, or just bind up your hands, right? And I said, okay, for the next 40 years, I'm going to essentially I'm going to bind up your hands, and I'm going to have you go ahead and function and do what you're going to do. Well, what do you think is going to happen to sort of that area in your brain that controls all this fine-tuning movement and all this sensation? Do you think that area of your brain is going to still maintain that? No. Okay, the brain's very plastic. The brain is going to adapt differently, and you're going to find that, I no longer seem to be needing or I'm able to utilize this element of sensation and mobility in my hands, my fingers, and wrists. So you're not going to go there in your brain. By the same token, you're going to get all stiff and everything in your degenerative joints because you're not moving them in your hands. So what are we doing at our feet? What are we doing when we're putting our feet in these boxes with a little heel on it and taking away all that sensory information, for our brains? Now, they've done some studies where they've looked at people, walking on, say, river rocks versus walking on, just like regular surface, and, comparing kind of the benefits. And of course, both sides benefit from just being up and walking, for half hour doing that. But with the people who do, walking on like river rocks and walking on pebbles and an uneven surface for a period of time, not only do you have that improvement of just sort of overall, cardiovascular health, but you also have improvement in blood pressure, which is kind of interesting. But if you think about it, you're like, yeah, well, maybe you got all these reflex points on the bottom of your feet, but also the fact that you're kind of in the moment. You're sitting there and you're doing something. You're kind of, you're sort of, in tune with what you're feeling at your feet and just present in the moment. It's almost like a form of meditation. The other thing to think about is that, your balance, so that people that did the river rock walking, their balance improved. Well, that makes sense. Once again, you're on an uneven surface. Your brain's having to, not only are your tissues having to adapt and your muscles and everything having to be able to conform to sort of these different shapes, but your brain's having to make all these adjustments. Your vestibular system is getting stimulated. So it's really great to be able to do stuff where you're walking barefoot on surfaces that are a little bit uneven. Now, I discovered there's this great product, and actually you can find these, in different places. They sell these on Amazon. They sell these on Pilates.com. This is a little, it's a pebble mat, okay? And basically, you can see here, it's got all these little, kind of like, it looks like these little pebbles, and they're pretty firm, and it's just a silicone mat. And, I got one of these, and I actually took it up to the celebrity golf tournament for my golfers, which, kind of after they played a round of golf, they could get on there and actually sort of stand on it just to kind of get the feet, that have been, once again, locked in these really firm shoes, just to give them a chance to explore a little bit. And it really, like I said, feels good. I was thinking about, hey, if I put this in front of like my standing desk, right, and I have just this opportunity, not that you're going to stand on it the whole time, but even just doing a little bit of just kind of stepping and balancing, it's like, oh yeah, when you're not used to this at first, it's a little intense. But as you start to settle into it, your tissues, once again, are going to get used to having this different sensation. Your plantar fascia, which is a tissue on the bottom of your feet, are going to start being able to adapt. And, and you're getting, once again, all of this really great stimulation to your brain. So, just something to consider. Now, you don't, these, like I said, you can get them on Amazon. I forgot how much they are, but you can very easily make your own little mat, right? I mean, granted, this is nice because it's portable and I can kind of move it around, but just kind of something to think about. Now, when we're talking back at looking at what's happening, on the lower end and getting up and down off the floor, a squat is a very basic, a deep squat's a very basic posture that, you ask anybody, going on to the deep squat, that's what we use as assessment. Now, I sprained both my ankles when I was a teenager pretty badly. And I never properly, never properly rehabbed them. So I'm limited in my, walking around in shoes my whole entire life. I'm limited in the amount of ankle dorsiflexion, which is the amount of bend you have here, which you need for a full squat. You can see that my feet are not touching. Now, what's interesting is that mobility, part of that is actually also dependent on some of the mobility you have in your plantar fascia. So one of the exercises that Philip Beach that I mentioned earlier has people do, and it's really interesting, something you should try, is just sitting with your feet turned underneath you and seeing if you can actually sit right down onto your heels, but sitting down on your heels so that your whole weight is on there, if you can get there. Obviously, if there's pain, you don't want to be doing that. But what you're going to feel is most people, if they're not used to doing this, they can only handle a few seconds and then, oh my gosh, get me off of it. But what we're doing here is we're getting some stretch into the big toe, into the great toe, and I've talked about that before. You need to have mobility at that great toe for good walking, otherwise you're going to probably collapse at the arch and have stiffness in the ankle. But I'm sitting here, I'm getting that stretch at that great toe, I'm getting the stretch of the plantar fascia, and you know, I can kind of vacillate between moving there, coming up to a tall kneel. I can go back into this plantar flex position and actually rest here for, you know, a few seconds. And I can do this back and forth. So this is something that if you are, you know, instead of sitting in your chair at home watching the news or doing whatever you're doing, you know, just try sitting down on the floor and kind of going back and forth between these postures, trying to see if you can tolerate this, you know, sitting on the balls of your feet. And once again, if this is really tough for you, this is something that, you know, it may take months and months to really be able to tolerate. So you can prop yourself up with pillows, do what you can to make that comfortable. But what's interesting is when I do this type of sitting, you saw what my squat looked like right there, because I just popped it out of nowhere, and it, you know, I needed a little help there. But after I do this for a few seconds, what's interesting is my squat, my dorsiflexion, my heels are a little bit closer. So it does improve my ankle mobility. Now this is something that I would need to be able to be working on over the course of, like I said, being very consistent and doing it over and over. And this is absolutely something, like I said, I was watching one of Philip's videos and I was like, oh my goodness, yes, I need to incorporate this. And that's why I wanted to share this with you guys, because it's just that good reminder that to play, we need to make sure we have mobility in the right spots. And like I said, sometimes it's more basic than we really think about. So I just want you to take that with you today, and just remember that you're never too old to play, so long as you keep moving. Okay? If you stop moving, you become too old to play, and because it becomes very difficult to do that. And if you want to play, think about what you do as a child as you get on the floor, and can you get up and down off the floor. My definition of a senior is somebody who needs assistance getting up and down off the floor. If you're 90 years old and you can get up and down off the floor no problem, you're not a senior in my mind. So just think about that as you, like I said, just kind of go through and do your normal everyday things. And let me know if you have any questions, if you have any comments. And you can always go to www.probalance.tv. I was thinking about creating a challenge for a little play challenge and actually integrating like sort of 5 days of some different exercises where we go through and actually think about, you know, where I actually take you through a little sequence of some of the stuff so you can kind of get back to that play. So if that's something you're interested in, you know, in the comment section, write yes, or, you know, make a comment there. And I'll get something together, and I'll email you guys and let you know, or at least notify you and let you know when I do that, and we'll have a little sign up. It'll be a little fun little challenge.